Hello and welcome to my channel. Passenger, one of the most memed operators out there. When he was first released on his debut banner, people were clowning on him as he was really weak. They were even saying he was the worst 6-star operator in the game. He had received countless buffs from Hypergriff and still failed to meet expectations. So here we are with his rerun banner. Should you pull for him? Let's find out. Passenger is a 6-star chain caster. His attacks can jump to up to 4 other enemies nearby. But with each jump, the damage dealt decreases by 15%. This means the first enemy will receive 100% of damage, the second enemy will receive 85%, the third will receive 70% and so on. Enemies hit will also be inflicted by a 0.5 second slow. This trait has a major flaw, with it being the damage reduction on each jump. This was the first red flag when Passenger was released. Operators from this archetype commonly boasts a high DP cost, long attack interval and a decent amount of resistance. Moving on to his other stats, Passenger has average HP and defense, and an attack stat that is higher than core casters and lower than AoE casters. Next up are his talents. Passenger's first talent lets him deal increased damage to enemies above 80% HP for 3 seconds. The first downside of this talent is the HP threshold. This talent is useless against enemies with below 80% HP. The second downside of this talent is the short 3-second duration. Though this is somewhat mitigated with his third skill, his second talent gives a small attack buff if there are no enemies in the 4 adjacent tiles, a rather situational talent. Moving on to his skills, Passenger's first skill is a power strike skill, making his next attack deal increased damage and jumps between 4 enemies. The slow duration is also extended to 1.5 seconds. While this skill can be used in AFK strategies, his other skills are much better options. I wouldn't recommend putting masteries into this skill at all. Now, if you think this video is helpful, do consider giving my channel a sub to stay tuned for more content. Passenger's second skill increases his range, gives him a small attack buff, and reduces his attack interval by 50%. His attacks can now jump to up to 5 enemies. The range increase is always a welcome addition. While the attack buff isn't that good, Passenger's attacks are fast enough to deal decent damage and make him a slowing machine. This skill has an average SP cost and good duration. Passenger's third skill is his signature skill, and he will focus on the enemy with the lowest HP in range and create a storm on that tile, dealing a critical hit to a random enemy in the storm every 0.5 seconds. The storm lasts for 4 seconds and this skill can store 2 charges. Doing the math, Passenger will launch up to 8 attacks during the 4-second duration. Not to mention the storm's range is pretty big. A decent burst skill that deals good arts damage and slow. This skill has an average SP cost. Next up are his modules. His first module reduces the jump damage reduction from his trait to 10% and increases the slow duration of his attacks to 0.8 seconds. The reduced damage reduction is a big upgrade. The other stages of this module updates his second talent, adding a SP recovery buff to it, a decent module to unlock. With that being said, Passenger's second module is undoubtedly better than his first. It updates his trait to completely removing the damage reduction between jumps, as well as buffing the damage increase and duration from his first talent, and reducing the HP threshold. This module is currently unavailable to global and will be added to the game during the Lingering Echoes event. If you have Passenger, it is highly recommended to unlock this module when it arrives. So, should you pull and build Passenger? I'd say he's a decent caster to consider pulling for. While Passenger had a really bad debut, we can see that Hypergriff had tried to buff him as much as possible, to the point where he is actually a decently strong operator. Passenger specializes in clearing out waves of enemies easily, and with his third skill, he can even take on boss enemies with a little support. A great operator to have for both general content and integrated strategies, though he rarely makes an appearance in endgame content like Contingency Contract. And that is all for this operator guide. I will be making similar videos in the future, so do consider subscribing to stay tuned. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.